Part 5. Life after Augusta. After Augusta's death in late December of 1945, the farmhouse in Plainfield felt emptier than ever. The silence was heavy, almost tangible. Rooms that had once echoed with her voice, her commands, her warnings, now only held the faint creak of the floorboards. The wind whispered through the cracks in the old wooden walls, carrying with it the scent of frost and decay. For Ed, the absence of his mother was more than grief. It was disorientation. The center of his universe, the guiding force of his life, was gone. The house became both a sanctuary and a prison. Ed closed off the rooms Augusta had used, the parlor, the sitting room, her bedroom. Everything remained as it had been, untouched, preserved, as though she might return at any moment. He kept her belongings in their places, her chair, her Bible, the small objects she had treasured. All remained meticulously clean, untouched, sacred. The rest of the farmhouse, however, began to decay. Dishes went unwashed, trash piled in corners, dust thickened on surfaces. The home reflected Ed's inner state, some areas perfectly preserved, some areas descending into chaos. It was as though the house itself mourned the woman who had commanded it for so many years. Neighbors noticed a change in Ed. He was quieter than ever, withdrawn, polite, but distant. His small, polite gestures seemed like echoes of the boy they had once known. Occasionally, he would help a neighbor with chores or babysit their children. The children found him gentle, soft-spoken, yet strange, as though he existed half in their world and half somewhere else entirely. Ed spent long hours wandering the property. He wandered through the fields and forests, examining the land, the animals, and the remnants of the farm. He collected odd items, scraps, bones, pieces of discarded machinery, small objects that fascinated him. They were remnants of life and death, evidence of the world he could observe, manipulate, and preserve. The isolation that had always defined his life became more pronounced. He spoke little to the outside world. He avoided town when possible. His life became contained within the farmhouse and the surrounding land. Time seemed to stretch, days blurred together, seasons changed, and Ed existed in the quiet center of it all. Without Augusta, he became increasingly focused on her memory. He imagined her presence in the rooms she had used. He spoke to her silently, obeying rules she had once enforced. Her guidance was now internalized, permanent, a voice that lived in his head as he moved through the empty house. He began to engage more with death, experimentation, and curiosity. Animals were skinned, cleaned, and preserved. Bones were catalogued and stored. He studied the forms, the textures, the structures, learning more with each passing day. It was methodical, obsessive, a way to fill the emptiness left behind by his mother. Neighbors noticed subtle changes in the house. Smoke from the chimney seemed less frequent. Windows were rarely opened. Footsteps inside were quiet, deliberate, almost measured. The farm continued to function, but only under Ed's strict private control. The outside world remained distant and often frightening. Ed rarely ventured far beyond his property. When he did, he was polite, careful, silent, observing the world with the same curiosity and caution that had guided him his entire life. It was as if he were testing the boundaries, learning what was safe, what was forbidden, what could be controlled. In those years after Augusta's death, Ed's mind became increasingly consumed by her memory, her teachings, her rules. He followed them meticulously, even in her absence. And at the same time, he began to explore his own obsessions, quietly, methodically, secretively. It was a delicate balance of devotion and curiosity, fear and fascination, order and chaos. And so, the farmhouse settled into a rhythm of its own, silent, controlled, and strange. Ed moved through it like a ghost, a caretaker of both memory and obsession. the lines between life and death, presence and absence, reality and imagination began to blur. And in that quiet, isolated world, the man who would become one of America's most infamous figures quietly shaped his dark, intricate universe.